Thank you, everyone. As Yvonne said, I'm the Veterans Employment Representative for Larimer County. A little bit higher? Okay. Do we have any veterans out there? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to get to know you. I do want to start off with a short video. One thing that I can say is that for those that have served in the military, the transition from military to civilian life is traumatic. And we sometimes don't think of that. I have served with many militaries from around the world, and I can honestly say we do the best job of taking a civilian and turning them into a military member, but we probably do one of the worst jobs of taking a military member and returning them back to civilian society. There are improvements being made, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I really would hope everyone out there would think about hiring a veteran and what they bring. I am available for one-on-one. I can come to your office. I can do Zoom chats, whatever works best for you, to talk about the many, many benefits of hiring veterans. I'd like to start off with a short video. It's less than 5 minutes long, but I think it's very impactful, and it talks about that transition from military to civilian life.
When September 11th happened, I remember the feeling was it was like a very personal attack on us as a country. I wanted to do something impactful. I wanted something that had a meaning behind it. And certainly the Army, there was meaning there.
When you're at sea, it's your primary concern as an engineer is to keep the ship moving forward and keep the lights on, and you don't have time to be afraid. You have a job to do.
My first job at 23 in the Army was in charge of 100 people and millions of dollars worth of equipment. You know, you had such an important job that giving it up, it's really hard to figure out where you fit after that.
I don't ever know what to say when somebody says thank you for your service. Because I don't think they even know what they're thanking me for, because I don't know what they're thanking me for.
I think my response normally is, you're welcome. I gained way more from it than I lost.
Don't thank me for my service, because it's cliche and it's normalizing, and it almost seems now obligatory.
I don't like it when people thank me for my service. It sounds like you've done your part, you're done with service, thank you so much, and now move along. I had been a helicopter pilot, I had been an S6. I expected when I came out that I was just gonna be, having to decide which of the jobs that I wanted.
I applied for 800 jobs, 800, to get one. And it's like that experience in the Army didn't count. It was like null and void. A hero? No.
No, I do not consider myself to be a hero.
No. Not by a long shot. To my kids.
It's a small number of people who deserve that.
There's around 7,500 heroes between Iraq and Afghanistan.
I don't think that you can thank a hero because they're not here.
I don't think I did anything that was heroic or did anything special for anybody. I had a lot of anxiety when I came home, which was weird because you'd think that you'd have more anxiety being overseas, but it was transitioning back home that was, pretty hard for me.
It's not having a network or not knowing where I belong, not knowing where exactly I fit in. It's pretty much you're plopped down and it's like, okay, find your way now.
When I first got back from Iraq and Afghanistan, I had to deal with a perception of who I was as a veteran. The vast majority of civilian perception of veterans is that we're broken, that we're riddled with PTSD, or that we have so little skills that all we can do is knuckle drag.
I hadn't quite realized that people were looking at me that way, that not only am I a big guy, that I'm sort of a weapon because I was in the military.
It's a stereotype, that's all it is. You probably pass 1,000 veterans a day and you have no idea that they're veterans because they just act like normal human beings.
The majority of us, the overwhelming majority of us, are positively impacted by our service because it brings strengths and attributes and skills out of us.
Veterans are entrepreneurial, they understand diversity, they're incredible leaders.
So many of us have been through really, really weird and tough situations, and we're such better persons for them. And if you're a hiring manager, you know a hiring manager, say, hey, our next hire should potentially be a veteran. That's really the best way that you can say thank you.
Don't thank me. Let's talk about how we can make society better for veterans who are having a hard time reintegrating.
There are better things to say, like, oh, you were in the military. What did you do? How long did you serve?
Tell me about your service. But don't ask that if you don't really care or you don't want to know the answer. But if you do, feel free to ask it. That's a way that we close this divide, right? Is share these experiences with each other.
Please don't thank me, join me. Come out and serve with me and see the fact that I'm not done serving. I'm not even close. Thank me when I'm done at the end of the day. Thank me 50 years from now for all the things that we did together. Don't thank me now for what I did in the past.
So the first thing I'd like to address on that is you're not going to offend any veteran by thanking them for their service. I want to clear that up right away. I think what they're trying to say is, that's a fairly recent movement of thank you for your service. And I know the first time somebody said that to me, I'll be honest, I didn't know how to respond because I didn't know what they were thanking me for. I got way, just as the speaker said, I got way more out of it than I put in, and I put in a lot. So the one thing that I'd like to say about veterans, too, is that I want to dispel the myth that the military, they only do what they're told. And they're automatons, and they only go out. I want to dispel that as a myth. What military members are looking for and veterans are looking for are boundaries. They want to know what the boundaries are. The rules of engagement, you've probably heard that phrase. Because in the military, when you're in uniform, you know what your role is, you know what the boundaries are, you know what the rules of engagement are. You know exactly where you stand. In the civilian world, it's chaos. The first time I worked outside of the Department of Defense, I was like, how does anything get done? Because this doesn't make any sense to me. So all we're looking for is, it's taken me a time to learn this. And as I work with veterans and helping them find employment, I am sometimes the one that has to explain to them the only boundaries out there are legal code. I mean, you can literally do anything you want. Now, there will be consequences for things that you do or don't do. But as long as you don't break any laws, there's no rule that says you can't apply for a job, work there for 3 weeks, and if it's not a good fit for you, you don't have to stay like you were when you're in the military. You signed on for a 4-year hitch or whatever. But I brought with me, our program, the JVSG program, the Jobs for Veterans State Grant Program. It goes back to the Truman and Roosevelt presidencies. And it started with, we had a lot of returning veterans from overseas, from World War II, that were coming back and finding out they no longer had a job. Why? Because the workforce accommodated for their, leaving the workforce. So this goes back many, many decades. And my primary role, I actually have two primary roles. I guess I have two roles. I'll just put it that way. One is to help veterans find work, but another is to help educate business owners and hiring managers on why they might want to consider hiring veterans and what the many benefits are. I'm available to come out to speak to you and share my information, but I thought it would be more impactful to talk about that transition from military life to civilian life by bringing a couple veterans with me that have worked with the JVSG program and worked with me. And I'm honored to introduce the first one, Kendrick.
Hello, my name is Kendrick Hargrove, and I'm recently out of the Air Force of 8 years, or separated as a staff sergeant, and I was an F-16 crew chief or jet mechanic. And I've been out of the Air Force for 1.5 years now, and I can say, transitioning out of the military and into civilian, dimension has been extremely difficult. I'm a fourth generation, armed forces member of my family. My great-great-grandfather, my great-uncle, my father, and then myself. And I've been all over the world. I've been to Germany, Korea, Japan, Africa, Morocco, Middle East. And so when I got out and I went to CSU, I could not relate to any of my peers in any capacity. It was so difficult to fit in, so I felt alienated and stuff. And so to move from the business, of killing to a business of healing, I work at Healing Warriors program now because of Chuck Cruz, and I have the time of my life. So when I'm in the military, I learned that, a job is not just a job, it's a way of life. So when you enter a job or a workforce, you're responsible for yourself and your peers, but also you have the responsibility for the people underneath you as well as the people above you. And so I found it really strange when I transitioned out, hearing about all these young guys just quitting their jobs left and right didn't make any sense to me and stuff too. So when I work at Healing Warriors program now, which is a suicide prevention non-narcotic treatment facility for veterans, I put my all into it. So to better serve myself and my peers as well as the ones above me and below me, we do this in the military too. All veterans do this. We don't just learn our own job. We learn everyone else's job too, just so we know how the whole thing works. So if things go down, we know exactly what to do if we can't get their assistance, right? So I'm a jet mechanic. I do servicing, tires, landing gear and stuff. So I didn't just learn my job. I learned logistics, supply, electrical, environmental, avionics, sheet metal. I learned all of it. You know why? Because if things went down, my guys would rely on me to get the job done. And so those skills transition from the military to now. And so if you get a veteran, because you will meet a veteran, I know you will, but if you meet a veteran, if and when, or when you meet them, if your interests align with theirs, grab them and hold on to them and don't let go, I promise you. Because one thing that's the biggest factor from transitioning is that in the military is very rigid in terms of failure and mistakes. You can't make mistakes, can't afford to, right? But in the civilian realm, there's way more room for failure. And what that room, you can fill that room with is constant progression, constant development, and positive change, and then everyone will grow. Because in the military, it's not just about you, and it never will be about you. So, service before self is a big thing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kendrick. And then I also have a U.S. Army veteran, Tracy. He also went through the JVSG program.
Hi. Hi, my name is Tracy Bauer, and I promised Chuck that I would not be the keynote speaker today, which has happened many times, so I have to purposefully keep this brief. But I was a deep sea diver in the Army for 21 years. I retired in 2018, and I assure you I exist, so I promise I'm real. I retired in 2018. I had led some of the biggest operations my field had ever seen while I was in. I did get a degree that was essentially considered worthless when I retired due to degree milling and so on and so forth. So when I retired, I took a job with my brother in his large excavation company, and I project managed the 5G build in Colorado Springs, the entire thing. And working for my brother, I was able to get a job that paid very well right away. How many of you know what imposter syndrome is? Many, right? Okay. I can lead some of the biggest things, project manage them, $300 million projects with almost no failure. I've been doing it my entire life. Yet, I feel like I didn't have the ability to apply for a job at one of your companies. And oftentimes your algorithms would just sort me out. You would never even meet me. You would never interview me. You would never even have a chance to talk to me. Not one. So here I was, coming back to school, saying, let me shore up my degree as best I can and see where I can go from there. Fortunately, a very good friend of mine moved into a new position, and I was asked if I would like to take over his old role at Front Range Community College and advise veterans, which is something that I love doing and would love to do with my career moving forward. And I asked him, can you help me write a resume? I had no idea how to do something like that. And I didn't even know if I would even have an opportunity to get that job, because I didn't feel like I was even going to be able to fit into that role. Something that I don't think anybody would have even had a chance to do as well as I could. with my experience and background and knowledge of the veteran community, connections in the veteran community that I'd already made in Northern Colorado just being here for a couple years. And it was very, very difficult for me to feel like I could even fit into that position. But all this talk that we've had today about workers, 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 you're not even looking at them. And that's where they can manage things, they can lead things. They're logistical experts in the veteran community that you aren't even giving them an opportunity in many ways because you aren't even looking at them because they don't have a piece of paper. And many of my former bosses might reach back to my current bosses and be upset that I'd said that. However, many of the veterans in our current community right now, they go straight into public service as cops, firemen, try to work for the government, take labor jobs, and never put those skills that they've developed into action. And I would not have done so either. I became a plumber for 2 years. No offense to plumbers. They're great. They're amazingly smart and great at their jobs. And it's a very technical field. However, I'm 43 years old and 100% disabled veteran. I couldn't do that forever, not as an apprentice. So I went back to school and I got a lot of assistance from Chuck, but that imposter syndrome that I felt and applying for a couple other positions and never even getting an opportunity to talk to somebody in an interview. Because if you had interviewed me, you would have hired me in a second, any one of you. But I never got that opportunity. So these are some of the challenges that we veterans face because 4 combat deployments, countless small deployments across the country, and a disabled wife, I never got the opportunity to really shore up that degree problem that I faced when I was in. So I just would say, take those opportunities. Maybe start looking at your hiring practices. Look at veterans. See what they have to offer, bring to the table. It never hurts to add one to the interview process.
Thank you, Tracy. I really appreciate that. Yes, and you know, when you think about the military, a lot of times, unless you actually served, there may be some misconceptions out there. One of them is that you only follow orders. Another one is that the only thing we do is run around, yell at each other, and do push-ups. Okay, we do a lot more than that. You can think of any military base as a city unto itself. Any job you can think of that's out there in the civilian world, there's probably somebody in uniform doing that very same job on base. And I know when I retired from the military, basically I ran a community college. I had a faculty staff. I had a staff, faculty. I had an administrative assistant. I had that nice corner office with the leather furniture and everything. It was great. But I also handled things like disciplinary issues. I handled awards. I had to often deliver bad news to military members that maybe they lost a loved one back home, because that's how they used to deliver the news, is whoever is in charge of that unit, of that person's unit at the time, gets to deliver the news. So in other words, all of these skills, and when I got out of the military, I couldn't even apply for those types of jobs because a lot of times it was viewed as, well, that's the military, it's different. I assure you it's not. It's very, very similar. One of the best examples I can think of is when I first started working at Front Range Community College, I had a work-study assistant helping me, and she was an 8-year Army veteran that worked as a veterinary technician in the Army for over 8 years. When she got out, she could not apply for any vet tech positions. Why? She didn't have the degree. She could have taught some of the classes that she was in, but she had to use her time and her own military benefits and money to go to the school. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You'll never hear me disparage education. I'm a big proponent of it. But what I'm saying is that if you have on your job announcement, must have A, B, and C, and one of those is you must have that, veterans won't apply. They won't even consider it. They say if it says you must have 3 to 5 years experience with this particular software program, they're not going to apply unless, because they're very, very much, if it's in front of them in black and white, as Tracy and Kendrick shared, they say, well, I guess I'm just not eligible. They've got very similar experiences, and if you get a chance to talk with them, you'll discover that they can do the job. One of the best examples, as I'm wrapping up, one of the most amazing stories, and my favorite story of all my years in the Air Force, is I was part of a team that basically we did a lot of cross communication and support with former Warsaw Pact countries. I was assigned to Hungary, and I spent many times with that. And I was in a special duty for professional development, so I wasn't actually doing my primary duty, which was information technology, computers. It was in professional development. And they take people from all different career fields, and they put them in this special duty. Well, one of my coworkers, he just happened to be from civil engineering, and he was an electrician by trade. He was assigned Romania. And he went to Romania, and they're a very poor country. They do not have the professional enlisted corps that the United States has. But they were showing him and through their facilities, and they were talking about this one schoolhouse that they wanted to get up and running. But they barely had enough materials, and they didn't have the labor because there weren't electricians. They didn't have the money to pay for an electrician to come in and wire it up. This type of equipment, and then a couple bodies, and I'll wire it this weekend. And they said, okay, we'll call your bluff, you crazy American, because there's no way you're going to be able to do this. He did it. He wired that schoolhouse up. They were in shock because they just could not believe someone could do that was in the military. In fact, the head of their Air Force sent to our 4-star, the commander of USAFE, United States Air Forces in Europe, a letter of appreciation that was read to all of us saying, whatever you do, please keep sending us these senior NCOs because they can do anything. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Yvonne. Thank you so much for inviting me, Yvonne.
Thank you.